The Viking religion, or what is known as the Old Norse religion, is a collection of religious beliefs that were prevalent among the peoples of Northern Europe before their conversion to Christianity. This religion is characterized by its rich and complex mythology, which speaks about gods, humans, and mythical creatures. The Viking religion is based on the worship of a group of gods who played a major role in the daily lives of the Vikings, whether in wars or in the religious rituals that were performed to seek protection and blessings. The most prominent gods in this religion were Odin, the god of wisdom and war, and Thor, the god of thunder, in addition to many other figures that appeared in Norse mythology, such as Loki and Freya. The Vikings believed that life and death were closely connected to the other world, as they believed that brave warriors who die in battle enter Valhalla, the hall of the gods, to live in eternal bliss. To learn more details, follow us until the end, and do not forget to support us by liking the video and subscribing to the channel so you can receive all that is new. The Viking religion originated in the regions of Northern Europe, and it went through multiple developments from ancient times until the period in which Christianity was adopted. This religion relies on a set of beliefs related to gods, myths, spirits, and multiple worlds. The foundations upon which the Viking religion was built were closely connected to nature and warfare, in addition to life and death. In the beginning, the Vikings believed in the existence of a group of gods who exercised a great influence over human life. The most prominent of these gods was Odin, the god of wisdom and war, and the Vikings believed that he watched over battles and major events in the world. Alongside him was Thor, the god of thunder, who was considered the protector of humans from evils and evil spirits. There were also other gods, such as Loki, the god of deception, and Freya, the goddess of love and beauty. The Vikings believed that these gods played a central role in the world in which they lived, and they believed that these gods influenced everything around them, from the weather to war, and even their daily lives. For example, the Vikings would offer sacrifices to the gods as part of religious rituals aimed at obtaining protection from the gods and avoiding their anger. The Vikings also believed in the existence of many parallel worlds, and among these worlds was Valhalla, which was considered a place designated for brave warriors who die in battle. These warriors were regarded as heroes in the eyes of the Vikings, and they believed that they would move to Valhalla, where they would live an eternal life of continuous fighting and constant pleasure. In Valhalla, warriors were supposed to live in a vast hall under the supervision of Odin himself, drinking wine and eating food throughout the day, so that they would always be ready to fight in an eternal battle. Other mythical elements that existed in the Viking religion included magical creatures and spirits that influenced their lives. Norse myths spoke about giants, who were considered enemies of the gods and humans, as well as sacred trees and different worlds that overlapped with the human world. Although the Viking religion relied heavily on beliefs about gods and nature, it also included a philosophy about life and death. The Vikings believed that death was not an end, but rather a transition to another world where the individual could continue life in a different way. This belief was reflected in their daily lives, as the Vikings took care to prepare for death by performing certain rituals. Among the most important of these rituals were the burials that were held for fallen warriors, where they were prepared with weapons and objects that would help them on their journey to the other world. In the Viking religion, the sacred triad included three of the greatest gods who played a central role in the lives of the Vikings and in determining their fate. These gods were Odin, the god of war and wisdom, Thor, the god of thunder and strength, and Loki, the god of deception and trickery. Each of them embodied a different aspect of human nature and the struggle between good and evil, and together they formed a driving force in Viking mythology and thought. Odin was considered the greatest of the gods in the Viking religion and the father of warriors. He symbolized wisdom and spiritual power, and he ruled Valhalla, the hall of bravery that receives warriors who die in battle. Odin was known for his sacrifice in pursuit of knowledge, as he himself tore out one of his eyes in order to obtain absolute wisdom from Mimir's well. He was also considered a god who took part in wars. However, he sought knowledge above all else and possessed a complex personality that combined courage and cunning. The Vikings believed that Odin was the one who guided them in battle and in the afterlife. As for Thor, he was considered the god of thunder and protection. He was celebrated in many rituals and was regarded as the force that protects humans from evils. Thor possessed the famous hammer Mjolnir, which was used to strike his enemies, among them the giants who were considered enemies of the gods. Thor represented physical strength and was symbolized in battles and situations that required immense power. He was also a symbol of benevolent nature that protects life from the forces of darkness. Through the strength he possessed, Thor was viewed as a god who could be relied upon to protect the Vikings from enemies. As for Loki, he was a different kind of god. He was considered the god of deception and cunning, and was famous for his ability to manipulate events and the gods themselves. Loki was a central figure in many myths, as he often caused problems, yet he also provided solutions in unconventional ways. In Viking mythology, Loki suffered from many contradictions. At times, he helped the gods overcome their enemies, and at other times, he caused tension and destruction. Loki was a symbol of change, as his actions represented disorder and instability in the world, but he was also considered a source of creativity and innovation. Loki expressed that unconventional force that determined the fate of both gods and humans alike. The religious rituals and ceremonies of the Vikings reflected a deep spirit of interaction with nature and the gods, as they believed that the gods controlled their fate on earth. These rituals were an inseparable part of their daily lives, from birth to death, and they focused primarily on worship and reverence for the gods, in addition to celebrating religious festivals and traditions that served as social bonds, bringing them together. One of the most important rituals practiced by the Vikings were those related to battle and warfare. The Vikings believed that fate in battle was determined by the gods, and therefore, there were complex rituals associated with entering combat. Before setting out on any raid, there were rituals that emphasized strength and courage, such as offering sacrifices or special prayers to Odin, the god of war and wisdom, to ensure victory and survival in battle. Warriors would offer sacrifices by slaughtering animals, especially horses, as a sign of loyalty to the gods and as a guarantee of martial strength. The Vikings also believed in life after death, and they believed that souls would move to Valhalla, the hall of bravery ruled by Odin, where heroes who died in battle were received. There were celebrations resembling funerary rituals in which bodies were burned or buried, along with weapons and necessary equipment, in order to secure the soul's journey to the other world. Ceremonies could also be held to commemorate the dead, where warriors would organize feasts and martial displays in remembrance of the deceased, honoring them and their spirits. Festivals were among the most prominent religious rituals of the Vikings, as celebrating festivals dedicated to specific gods was a common practice. One of the most famous of these festivals was the Festival of Harval, which was celebrated in winter and was dedicated to Thor, the god of thunder and protection. This festival was characterized by foods and drinks that were offered as part of the rituals, and during it, a religious dance and symbolic movements were performed, representing their strength and their hope of surviving the harsh winter. Among the other rituals associated with the Viking religion were the rituals of ship consecration. Ships were considered sacred symbols, and the Vikings believed that they were part of the journey of the gods. Ships were offered sacrifices and were sanctified before sailing on an exploratory or raiding voyage. The Vikings believed that the sea was a deep world filled with magical forces, and therefore every part of the ship was treated as carrying spiritual power that granted them victory over their enemies. In addition to this, the Vikings had rituals related to foretelling their future. These rituals included consultations with priests and seeresses. They used various methods, such as casting stones or bones, and predicting future events based on these rituals. These acts of divination were considered important tools upon which the Vikings relied to determine their fate, whether in raids or in making important decisions. In the Middle Ages, the relationship between the Vikings and the Christian religion was filled with conflicts and complex transformations. The Vikings began as a pagan people who believed in a group of gods such as Odin, Thor, and Loki, and they practiced rich religious rituals that reflected their veneration of nature and the forces of the universe. However, over time, the Vikings were exposed to many religious influences that pushed them to interact with Christianity and adopt some of its aspects, which led to a gradual religious transformation in Northern Europe. At the beginning, the Vikings were famous for being warrior raiders, and they were known for launching raids on Christian lands in Europe, such as those they carried out against England and France. But despite being raiders, their early confrontations with Christianity were limited to military aspects, as they destroyed monasteries and churches during their campaigns. Nevertheless, in many places the Vikings remained distant from direct Christian influence, maintaining their old religion in their daily lives. Over time, religious transformations began to take a clearer direction as the Catholic Church started spreading Christianity among the Vikings, especially through missionaries and monks. With the spread of Christianity in Viking lands, there were many groups that began to accept it, starting from kings to the upper social classes, who saw in Christianity a means of achieving political and religious stability. The Vikings, who revered strength and bravery in their gods, began to see in Christianity a new spiritual power that could provide them with protection and divine blessing. Although some Vikings continued to resist Christianity, kings and influential figures in Viking societies began to promote Christianity in a more organized manner. King Olaf II of Norway was one of the key figures who played an important role in spreading Christianity among the Vikings. King Olaf worked to convert his kingdom to Christianity through direct efforts, such as building churches and educating the people about the new religion. He also used political power to pressure those who did not accept Christianity, which led to the gradual adoption of Christianity in the regions under his control. The process of religious change was not easy, as Viking societies held on to their old customs and religious rituals that dated back to the pre-Christian era. In addition to that, there was strong resistance from some local leaders and figures who saw Christianity as a threat to Viking culture and traditions. This resistance showed that the Vikings were in a complex phase of religious transformation, combining the old and the new in their beliefs and practices. Over time, the Christian religion began to have a deeper impact on Viking society. Viking communities transformed from the worship of pagan gods to the promotion of the Christian monotheistic doctrine. These transformations may seem sudden, but this religious shift was not only the result of violence or direct pressure. Rather, it was also the result of deeper cultural and social processes related to strengthening political and economic influence, as well as the cultural impacts brought by Christian missionaries. Religious symbols played a central role in shaping the beliefs and cultural identity of the Viking peoples. They were not merely decorative carvings or magical signs, but rather a profound expression of the cosmic and spiritual understanding of these ancient Scandinavian societies. Each symbol carried within it meanings related to power, protection, destiny, and connection to the gods, which made it an essential part of the daily life and religious rituals of the Vikings. One of the most prominent of these symbols was Thor's hammer, known as Mjolnir, which is the most famous and revered symbol in Norse mythology. The hammer represented protection, strength, and order, and it was worn by warriors and common people alike as an amulet to protect them from dangers, whether in battles or in daily life. The hammer was associated with the god of thunder, Thor, who held a central position in Viking beliefs as the defender of the gods and humans against the forces of evil and darkness. Another symbol of no lesser importance was the sun wheel, or the solar crosses, which were used to represent the cycle of life, solar energy, and immortality. The sun wheel symbolized time and the continuous movement of the universe, and it was used in agricultural and religious rituals to ensure the fertility of the land and the protection of crops. This symbol was particularly associated with the sun god and the god Freyr, who represented fertility and prosperity. Symbols such as Jormungandr, the cosmic serpent that surrounds the world, also played a role in expressing the idea of destruction and renewal, which are among the philosophical and religious foundations of Norse mythology. This serpent reflected the eternal struggle between the forces of good and evil, and it appeared in myths related to the end of the world, Ragnarök, which illustrates how symbols were used to represent profound cosmic concepts that go beyond tangible reality. The Vikings also used runic symbols, which were alphabetic characters that carried within them magical and spiritual powers. Runes were not only a means of writing, but were carved onto weapons, stones, jewelry, and graves to provide protection, bring good fortune, or enhance victory in battles. It was believed that each runic letter possessed a special power of its own, making runes a tool for communication with hidden worlds and the gods. Within the context of religious practices, these symbols were strongly present in rituals held in temples or in sacred natural places, such as forests, mountains, and rivers. In this way, symbols were intertwined with elements of nature, reflecting the unity between humans and the spiritual world in the Viking worldview. It is worth noting that these symbols were not restricted to the religious elite or priests, but were widespread among all segments of society, which indicates the extent to which religion was integrated into the daily identity of the Vikings. Symbols were also used in graves and on tombstones to signify the transition to the afterlife and to accompany the soul on its journey to Valhalla or Helheim, which are the two afterlife realms in Norse belief. In the end, the Viking religion formed a complex spiritual system deeply rooted in myth, where beliefs were not merely folk tales, but a living part of Scandinavian society's identity, guiding actions and explaining the universe and destiny. From the worship of great gods such as Odin, Thor, and Freyr, to the glorification of heroic death and the transition to Valhalla, this belief system expressed the Vikings' deep perception of heroism, honor, and life after death. As Northern Europe gradually converted to Christianity, this belief system did not disappear completely. Rather, its traces remained firmly embedded in the arts, myths, and cultural identity of the northern peoples. Studying the Viking religion today is not only a journey into ancient rituals and beliefs, but also a window into understanding a civilization that shaped its features between the sword, myth, and faith. To learn more details, follow us until the end. And do not forget to support us by liking the video and subscribing to the channel so you can receive all that is new.